And we are live. Welcome to another episode of Erik Whiskey Studies Live. This week and next week, we are looking at a Bowmore Distillery. David Belcher, thanks for tuning in. I'm going to pour myself a little bit of this Douglas Laing 20-year-old Old Particular Bowmore, and we're going to go head-to-head with a Scotch Malt Whisky Society 17-year-old Bowmore. When I visited Islay Distillery, when I visited Islay Distillery, when I visited the Islay Distilleries, traveled on Islay, we went to Ardbeg, Laphroaig, and Lagvulin and did actual tours. We did a tour of Bruichladdich, Kilchoman, and Bunnahabhain, and we stopped at Kalila, kind of hung around the front of it, went into the tasting room. Excuse me, let me get something to drink some water here. It's just allergies. And we were able to go in the tasting room, get a good look at Kalila, but we didn't do an actual tour. And we didn't do anything at Bowmore, but it was like I said, during some free time, hey, if you want to go pop in at Bowmore, you can. We really didn't have a whole lot of time to. So all I got to do at Bowmore was sort of walk around it because it was closed because we were so busy visiting the other distilleries. But while I was there on Bowmore, I got to taste some whiskeys from Bowmore. One was at the Bowmore House. So the town of Bowmore, sort of the capital of Islay. And we stayed at the Bowmore House, which has like cottages. And right down the road is Bowmore Distillery. So at the Bowmore House, got to taste some Bowmore whiskeys that were really, really good. They were like cask strength, had some good vintage, probably 20 plus, maybe 28 years old. Don't remember. But they were impressive and really, really, really good. I've tasted all the Bowmore core range, which I'm going to talk about in a little bit. And I found them less than wow. When I have mentioned to people that I've toured all the distilleries on Bowmore, Ardho wasn't open yet. And I mentioned, well, I got to walk around Bowmore, but didn't do an extra tour. The comment I got from people was, well, you're not really missing anything. Overall, I would say most whiskey enthusiasts are less than enthusiastic about Bowmore, or at least their core range. But then they'll say, but if you ever taste maybe a distillery-owned edition or an independent bottling of Bowmore, you can find some really, really impressive whiskeys. So that's what tonight is really about, is taking another look at a couple independent bottles and going head to head between two Bowmores from independent distilleries. Uncle Nate drinks whiskey. Thanks for tuning in. Michael Gonzalez, thanks for tuning in. Jesse said, let me see here. He just opened Scotch Malt Whisky Society cask 113.4 Sheep in Wolves Clothing. Sounds nice. Drinking Bowmore 18. And I have a bottle of the Bowmore 18 here next to me. So I do plan to go back to Islay. I want to visit Bowmore. I do want to do an actual tour. They have their own malting floors, although like other distilleries, they're not using 100% what comes off the floor. And Ardho, by the time I get back there again, they'll probably be open. They'll probably at least have their first release. So I do want to tour Bowmore. And the sense of this is not just myself, but other people is, in terms of the official bottlings of Bowmore, is you kind of get this, they have so much potential. They could be so much better, more than what they are. So let's do a little tour of Bowmore Distillery, a virtual tour of Bowmore Distillery. Then we're going to get into the core range. I'm going to talk more about the core range and lay it all out there. And then we'll look at the two whiskeys I'm having tonight, the Bowmore 20 from Douglas Laing and the Bowmore 17 that I'm having from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. All righty. Fraser Thistle, thanks for tuning in. And here we go. It's under 3 minutes. Alrighty. So tell you what, I'm going to actually start with a little of the Bowmore 18-year-old. The other night, I was watching or rewatching John Wick. I'm a big fan of the first Matrix movie. I don't think Keanu Reeves is the greatest actor in the world, but he has his moments and he has a type of film that fits him. It works really, really well. I like the first Matrix movie. The last Matrix movie they did, I liked, and the John Wick films I like. I'm looking forward to the fourth John Wick film coming out next week. Anyway, so I'm watching a movie. Context plays a big part of your perception of things. So I'm watching one of the John Wick's movies, and I had myself actually the Bowmore 18-year-old. In doing a study, if I'm going back over a distillery that I've looked at before, and I have other bottles from them, I like to go back and do some off-camera comparison and remind myself of what they're like. So I poured myself a little 18. I've tasted the other bottles from the core range, but I don't have them in my whiskey library. And while I was focused on the movie and enjoying the movie, and I bought a new big screen television. It's about 43 inches across. It's probably 70 something inches diagonally, There's a big ass screen. I've never owned a television this big before. So, and it's high def and it's, internet ready. So I now watch YouTube on this big gigantic television, It's really cool. Got good sound and everything. The movies, you see every little detail. They're sharper. It's almost 3D at times. Anyway, so as I'm watching the movie, I pay attention to the movie and I'm noticing how much in the movie, the details I hadn't noticed before, even though I've watched these movies before. And as I'm smelling and tasting this 18-year-old, I'm really liking it. I'm enjoying it. Now, classic sherry notes, fig, dates, raisins, a little bit of saltiness. There's like the interior of a fig Newton. There's like a raisin jam or raisin jelly. So it's very concentrated, a little saltiness. The smoke that is out of peat there is very well integrated. It's just a waft of peat and smoke, which I think is typical of Bowmore. They're not Lafroig or Ardbeg or Lagavulin. They're not like Kalila or some of the bigger peated whiskeys, say Port Charlotte 10 or anything like that. So they're much milder in character. It has a nice sweetness to it. It's a whiskey that's ready to go. You don't need to tinker with it. Don't need any water. It quickly gets drowned out in ice. The evolution is moderate and has a good medium plus length finish. This is 43% alcohol by volume. I'll go over the notes of the core range. So if you're not analyzing it to death, as we whiskey tubers do, it's a nice, enjoyable dram. However, Andrew Hammermaker, thanks for tuning in. However, let's get into the notes. Let's look at the notes on these whiskeys. Oh, by the way, before I get started, I'll talk about this at the end. Just something that's coming up next weekend. All right, let's look at the core range. So we have the 12-year-old, 40% ABV, about $45 in my neighborhood. The 15-year-old, 43% alcohol by volume, about $78. The 18-year-old, which is what I'm currently drinking, 43% alcohol by volume, $118. And then the 25-year-old, 43% alcohol by volume, $410. Keep that one in mind when I show you the notes for the Douglas Laing and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. But if you look at these ABV levels, that's sort of what I think makes whiskey enthusiasts less than enthusiastic about them. We would like to see them 46, not just for the sake of numbers on a bottle, but because it'll deliver more flavor. We would like to see these all at a minimum of 46% ABV. Some whiskey tubers I've heard refer to Bowmore as the Dalmore of Islay. In other words, making a reference to their use of E150 and their ABV level. So this is kind of what makes whiskey tubers, at least the most that I've talked to, less enthusiastic. Now, I do know at least 2 whiskey tubers I've talked to that they say they like Bowmore. One in particular, he actually said he said Bowmore was his favorite Islay. And I know why. It's because he's not as big a fan of the huge peaty whiskeys. He likes a little bit of peat. I'm not going to tell you who it is. It doesn't really matter. He likes a little bit of peat, but he doesn't like the huge amount of peat. And so for him, Bowmore is hitting the level that he looks for when it comes to a peated whiskey. And I you know what? I can go along with that. None of us are making arguments that Bowmore should increase the ppms on the whiskeys. I don't have any problem with the level of smokiness or peatiness on any of their whiskeys in terms of the core range or their official bottle releasings. They are somewhat similar to Highland Park in that fashion, in the way in which, it's not a big smack of smoke and peat, and it tends to be well interwoven. I would say Highland Park is actually a little bit more tense than Bowmore, but they're getting to that range. Oban is kind of in that range. Ardbeg and Lechik are more alike. So I don't have any issue with the peatiness of it, the level of intensity of the peat or smoke. But what we want is more oomph in the flavors and more delivery and a longer finish and more development. We think, particularly based on when you taste independent bottles, as I'm doing tonight, that when you taste the independent bottles of Bowmore, it gives you an impression of this is what Bowmore could be. And I'm not saying all their core range should be cast strength. I'm not saying that. But they could take in the 46 and have on the lineup, widely available, something that's over 50% ABV, a little higher up. That's what we would like to see, because you're leaving so much behind, and what people are paying for is a lot of water. Yes. The beard is back. Shayla, how you doing? By the way, Shayla, I'm not kidding you. So I mostly shaved it off because of COVID and the masks. In fact, I was just watching one of my old videos. When you have the beard and you wear a mask, when the beard gets longer down here and the mask is going like this, you get this weird loop, this weird curve in your beard because of the mask. Anyway, so I've seen multiple times you've made comments about me needing to grow the beard back. I'm not kidding. When I grew the beard back, I thought to myself, oh, Shayla will be happy. By the way, Shayla, if you want to, I'll put down a link. If you want to, after I go over the notes and so forth and compare the 2 whiskeys, if you want to jump on, if you have a Bowmore you want to talk about, I'll put a link. Just let me know in the comments if you want to come on, get yourself set up. Don't worry about if your hair is nice or not. Yeah, masks and beards don't work, man. So anyway, but if you want to come on, just let me know, and I'll drop the link in there. You can come on. So it's a nice whiskey. It's a whiskey. It's a whiskey, the 18-year-old that you don't have to think about. But when you look at the price, 118, 120, getting that range, and then you look what you could get from an independent bottler of Bowmore in comparable, maybe somewhat comparable prices, and definitely more ABV and and a little bit more age. then you realize, wow, a lot has been left behind. But someone gave me a bottle. I wouldn't cry about it, wouldn't complain. If I was at an event and someone handed me one, I was over someone's house, someone, hey, you want a glass? Sure. I'd be perfectly happy with it. All right. So let's look at, we looked at the core range. Now let's look at the two bottles. Michael says, Boomer 18 is 145 near me. Yeah. And in New York, and the 12-year is 56. So my experience looking online is New York tends to be a little bit more expensive, but they sometimes get access. They get access to releases before the rest of the United States. So if I'm on the hunt, sometimes I'll buy one from New York, at least that they ship to the United States. Why bother aging a whiskey for almost 2 decades and you're going to water it down and chill filter? Exactly. All right, so let's look at the notes for the other two bottles I'm drinking tonight. All righty. So now I don't expect anybody to run out and necessarily buy these. And I know these aren't readily available on your shelf. But the main point and the main takeaway here is a comparison between what's potentially available through an independent bottler versus what's available as a core range. And yet the quality, when you taste these whiskeys, the quality is there. They're very impressive if you can find them. And by the way, I have another bottle I got coming out, another review of another Bowmore that'll be out later this week. And if you can get one of those, I highly recommend it. All right. So the Old Particular, 20 years old, refilled hogshead. The 17 years old, also refilled hogshead. So the close comparison, only 3 years difference. Now, the quality of the cask can make the difference, make those 3 years difference meaningless. They're both non-chill filtered. They're both natural color. The Old Particular is 52.7. The Scotch Malt Whisky Society is 57 ABV. So they're within, 4.5%, these round numbers. Close enough to where it's not going to make a significant difference. So one has a little bit more age and the other one has a little bit more ABV. The Old Particular, there are only 291 bottles. You can still find it, by the way. And the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, 1,326 bottles. I would imagine the Old Particular was probably from a single cask. Obviously, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is from multiple casks. I would estimate probably 5 casks. An estimate. If you get 250 to 300 bottles, if that much, do the math. So when I bought this Old Particular, I paid $194. I looked online and it has jumped up. It is basically doubled. It was $194 when I originally reviewed it. It was $194 available. You could find it down at a shop down near Los Angeles, and you could buy it through Wine Searchers Wine Searcher. It's now $398. And the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, if it's still available through their website, this is the Time Travelers. This was a 2022 Fish Ale release. I did a video earlier this week, so if you want all the numbers for it, look it up. I didn't put the numbers on there. It is Distillery 3 rare cask, and there were 1,326 bottles. All right. So it didn't have. So it's a Distillery 3, which is Bowmore, and it's this Fish Ale edition, the Fish Ale edition. All righty. I'm clicking buttons. All righty. So click, clickety, click. When finishing the secondary cask for longer, impart more flavor. It depends on the quality of the cask. I think they do tend to level out in terms of how much you can extract from a cask. You can leave a spirit in a cask for too long, and you're starting to diminish in ABV, starts losing ABV without necessarily gaining any more flavor. If you look at Canadian whiskeys, they tend to age whiskeys in casks until the cask falls apart. And that's why you can get a 20-year-old Canadian that doesn't seem all that old, doesn't seem that much age, and they're very non-impressive. Canada, generally speaking, needs to, particularly the larger producers, needs to improve their casks and use more first fill and second fill rather than just old, tired casks. Ralphie talks a lot about distilleries using old, worn-out casks, the quality of the cask. So while we can harp on ABV and non-chill filtering, it also comes into cask quality. You could have a whiskey with lower ABV, less age, but be better than another whiskey with more age and higher ABV if the lower ABV and less age has better casks. Because having ABV and longer age out of a lower quality cask, you're not extracting as much flavor out of the cask in comparison to another one that has quality casks. So quality casks are really, really important. Now, color-wise, fairly similar, about the color of a Chardonnay. So it'll be light golden in color. Light golden color. So they look pretty much the same. By the way, if you ever watch my live streams on replay, this is a little tip for if you're going to be a whiskey tuber. One of the most challenging things is messing with lights and trying to get the lights right. And I'm not saying I've perfected it yet, but for the longest time, I had this problem where everything looked fine on camera, but when I watch it in replay, it was like this huge glare. And so I've been messing with the lights and messing with the lights and messing with the lights and adjusting the cameras. And finally, I figured out what it was. I had a white tablecloth. And what happened was there was a reflection coming off the white tablecloth. So if you watch one of my older live streams and there's this huge glare, I see everything seems totally whited out. Not that I exactly got a lot of color as it is, but got rid of the white tablecloth, reduced the glare off the white tablecloth, and that seemed to help. All right. The white tablecloth tradition comes from when I would look at wines and would tilt the glass and want to look at the color of the whiskey with the white background. That's why I was using the white tablecloths. I get rid of the white tablecloth. It seems to reduce the glare. All right, enough of that. So the question is the Douglas Laing as good as or better than the Scotch Malt Whisky Society? So the advantages of Douglas Laing. One, I don't find here in the United States, it's not like I can go to every store, Total Wine or whatever else, and find these bottles. Typically what I have found, at least in the San Francisco Bay Area, that a whiskey shop will buy an entire cask from Douglas Laing. And so the only place you can get that bottle, it's in one particular store because they bought all 270 bottles or how many bottles came out of the cask. And so they don't have as wide distribution. These are easier to get, if I may state the obvious, in Scotland. If you ever go to Scotland, you'll be blown away by the availability of what's there. One of the challenges of the Oswald Awards is what they have available and how much they pay is radically different than what we have here in the United States or in Canada. I would say here in California, particularly the Bay Area, we get better access to whiskeys, particularly Irish, for whatever reason. I think Scott over at Scotch Test Dummies buys his Irish whiskeys from California. We have a better selection and more availability than Canada. Anyway, one of the challenges of Oswald's is there's a lot of those whiskeys that are going to be up there to vote on that a lot of people outside of Scotland are never going to see and can't get and never tasted on, so they can't form an opinion. But there you go. All right. So there's a nice moderate amount of smoke. I would say there's a little bit more smoke intensity from the SMWS. It also seems to have a fresher fruit. Seems to have more citrus, some lemon and lime. This has more apple and pear. It has a lemon character, but it's more like a lemon pie, lemon pastry, whereas this is more like freshly squeezed lemons and freshly squeezed lime. And neat, the lemon and lime on this is very acute and very intense, whereas this is more a lemon custard. You know, it's not a fresh lemon, it's a lemon that's then been made in some sort of pastry or something. So, living in the land of Scotch, the Bay Area suits you. Do you miss Southern California? Southern California? No. I lived in San Diego twice, from 85 to 89 when I was in the Marine Corps, and from 96 to 2000. It has on 3rd Street or 3rd Avenue, 3rd Street, 3rd Avenue, I can't remember which it is the Whiskey House. They have one of the largest selections by the glass whiskeys in the United States. If you're ever in San Diego, check it out. San Diego has its nice things as well, but I live here in Half Moon Bay. It's 55 to 65 degrees. I have Islay weather here. Fog. I mean, it's foggy right now. Foggy every day. Nice, cool weather. It's been a very moderate summer, and I absolutely love it. Don't have to use any air conditioning whatsoever in comparison to the Central Valley, where it's over 100 degrees every day. All right, enough about that. So it's closer to like living in Scotland with the weather here. There's more of a sort of a dusty powdered sugar note on this, which kind of goes along with the lemon custard, lemon pie, the lemard. Have you ever had lemard? Lemon pastry, and the smoked peat character is a little bit more intense. All right, on the palate. Douglas Ling's really nice. These are second fill hogshead. If you don't know what a hogshead is a hogshead is where they've taken 3 other casks, taken them apart, and reassembled them to make a bigger cask. So basically, you're taking maybe 3 bourbon casks, disassembling, reassembling them, and trimming them, whatever, to make one larger cask. So you get more bottles per cask. You get less wood contact between the spirit and the oak. So it's a bigger cask. But they could recharge. There's other things you can do to a cask to get more character out of the cask. But so basically, you can get enlarged bourbon casks. You could think of it that way. It's very nice. It's very nice, neat, moderate peat. It's moderately sweet. It's creamy, powdered sugar, vanilla, a lot of vanilla. This is, we're going to get more into a vanilla pudding, almost like a vanilla lemon custard, and has a real nice long finish. It's not a smack upside the head, and you could enjoy it neat, really, really, really nice. I like the development on it, and it sort of finishes clean. Where some peated whiskeys, and I don't mind this, it's more like after you finish a peated whiskey, it's like you've been smoking a cigar or a pipe or a cigarette or something, and the way in which the peat lingers and lays around in your mouth, and maybe you want to brush your teeth before you go to bed, because when you wake up in the morning, I've had this happen, in the morning, if you didn't brush your teeth before you went to bed, maybe because you had too much to drink or whatever and you forgot, it's like you wake up with like you've been licking an ashtray all night long. So it's very, very nice. I would give it over 90 points. Would I spend $400 on it? The current price? Hell no. Hell no. Was it a little overpriced for at the time that I bought it? At half of that? No. No, it wasn't. But now $400 is a bit much. Shayla, if you're still watching, if you want to join in, let me know, and I'll drop the link in there. All right. I just reviewed this earlier this week. The bottle is right down there. I have to say, this one is down to here, and it's been open probably for a year and a half, 2 years. This one here is right here. So the length of time in which the bottle has been open could have some effect as well. But I think I've aerated this really, really well. And Christopher Malloy says he's drinking the Bunahaman Tweak Agra. I think it's Klingon. I'm not sure. 5 bourbon barrels make 4 hogsheads, so they aren't that much bigger. A wee bit. All right. Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Wow. So I rewatched my original release of this one, video on this one. Based on my memory of what it tastes like when I had it, it hasn't changed. And based on the character of what it is now, the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, the fruit character is much more intense. Now, it's slightly different. This is more of a lemon and lime. I described it in my video as if you're sort of biting into lemon and lime fruit, and it's just sort of gushing in your mouth. It's just this very intense, strong, fruity character. And the smoke sort of frames it on the outside, underneath and on the outside. The Douglas Laing, the smoke is more interwoven with it, where it is, and this is just a way of perceiving mouthfeel, whereas the Scotch Malt Whisky Society is sort of underneath, it's on the, particularly comes up on the back end, on the finish, but it sort of frames it. Now, what do you prefer? The way in which peat comes across, one over the other? It's a matter of personal preference. I wouldn't necessarily make the case that one is better than the other. It's just different. I would say the way in which the peat smoke more frames the whiskey in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society allows the fruit character to shine, to really show forth itself, to really make an impression. In fact, that's probably what's really going on, is because the fruit character, which is from fermentation, the fruit character is so intense that for a moment, it is stronger than the peat character, which then makes the peat character and smoke more of a background echo in the background, which then puts it on the outside of the whiskey. I think that's probably what's going on in my perception of it. Whereas if the fruit character and the peat character are equal in terms of loudness, think of something being turned up in volume, whereas if the smoke and peat character is equal to the fruit character, then they're going to seem much more intermingled. Whereas this one, because the fruit character is so intense and so strong, that it's louder than the smoke and peat character. Me personally, I prefer the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I think it has this particular bottling. Now, this is just Distillery 3. They could have other Bowmore Distilleries 3s. But if you're looking at Douglas Laing, or if you're looking at other Distillery 3 releases from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, I'm going to wage that this is probably typical of the bottles they get from Bowmore and how Bowmore plays itself. Although the 17-year-old, it's really, really nice. The way it plays itself is typically from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Can't say they're all the same, but it's probably more in line character with the choices that Scotch Malt Whisky Society makes in the choosing of cask from Bowmore. If I give them scores as they are now, wow. The finish, even the finish from the SMWS bottle, the intensity of the flavor lingers longer. I'm still tasting it now. I'm getting a little bit of otter pop. You ever have a lemon or lime otter pop? when we were kids. It's a lime slushy in a plastic thing. You have them in the freezer, and you cut the end off and you kind of eat it, and sort of intensely sweet, a lot of sugar. It's kind of like that. They're very, very, very intense. Erik, what Glenmorangie on your lower right? My lower right. This is the 18-year-old. This is a first fill bourbon cask. This, I already reviewed this. This is awesome. Probably one of the best examples of a first fill bourbon in terms of the intensity of the experience of the bourbon cask. This is something I would recommend to a bourbon lover. Obviously it's malt rather than corn, but just really, really nice. This is absolutely fantastic whiskey. And Glenmorangie, Glenmorangie does a lot of wine finishes, and they tend to be a lot of them are under $30 and lower ABV. But I think it still is an under the radar distillery. Really, really nice stuff. And for some reason, the bottles look almost the same as Old Pulteney, which is kind of interesting. Anyway, that's what that is. Killer whiskey. Love, love, love that whiskey. This is actually, I've got it down to here. This is a whiskey. I could kill this easy. Particularly, this is at, what's the ABV? 47.2. So, which is highly respectable. 46 and above, I would say is respectable. 47.2. And on ice, it does really, really well. So summertime, I like high bourbon cask or high ABV bourbons. Put them on ice. It does really, really well. So a nice whiskey. I know. Let's get back to Bowmore. Glenmorangie is very, very nice. All right. Up in Elgin, up in the Space side. And they have a little gift shop there. And you can get like sandwiches, whatever. And they have whiskey ice cream, which is very nice. So probably 91. This one's probably like SMWS 93. It's definitely going to make it in my top 10. Probably make my top 10 for 2022. An absolutely superb whiskey. Now, I think some people are going to get upset with me, and you're going to be hearing a lot about Scotch Malt Whisky Society from me. As everyone knows, big Ardbeg fan. Ardbeg is now over that way. I still like the core range. I recently did videos on Ardbeg. Still like the core range. I've become less of an enthusiast due to their marketing hype not being equal to the quality of the whiskeys in their committee releases. I'm kind of off. I've become a big fan of Scotch Malt Whisky Society because of not your filtered. I mean, all the things we constantly were ranting about cash strength. But this is for me, this is the biggest issue, is that the bottling from distilleries that either don't release bottles on their own or we can't otherwise get here in the United States. That's, for me, that's the biggest issue. If they were bottling things, some at 46, some at 50, but still maintain non-chill filtered, okay, I wouldn't like that as much, but, I could deal with it. But the fact that they are cask strength, the fact that there's no other way I would get these bottles. And the main point about this one is, and tonight's live stream, is if you want to experience the best of a distillery has to offer, check out the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Now, I've tasted some Dalmores. I have never reviewed a Dalmore. I imagine at one point, I just because it's something I have to study to understand distilleries, part of my academic journey in the world of whiskey. At some point, I'm probably going to have to review a Dalmore, but I don't like their master distiller or master blender, doing this, hello, how are you? And throwing it on the ground and all that bullshit. It annoys the hell out of me. It's pretentious bullshit. Mr. Patterson, All due respect to his expertise and knowledge, I'm sure he knows 1,000 times more than I do. But that whole thing, I hate that bullshit. I hate that bullshit. And then, kind of like Bowmore, all the E150 stuff. Let's knock it off. So, probably when it comes time for me to study Dalmore and do a whole video on the history and so forth of Dalmore, I will probably hunt down a bottle or keep my eyes open for a bottle of Dalmore from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. Richard Patterson, right? Yeah, Richard Patterson. So, and for transparency, I paid for my own membership to the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. The first 6 bottles I got, which are behind here, I got for free. They sent them for free. These 6 here, which I did a live stream and went over these just in terms of their neck pours. These are all distilleries you can't get or here in the United States, or they don't bottle their own stuff. Probably next year I'll go back to these and do a full in-depth study of the distilleries. I paid for those myself. Just to be transparent, and I noted it in the video, this is one that was sent to me by the SMWS, and they wanted me to do a video for this week. Will they keep sending me bottles like this? I don't know. And I honestly, I was a little, I don't want to be bought. I probably get every month 4 to 5 offers to do promotional things. Everything from whiskey stones to glasses to decanters to toppers to actual bottles of whiskey to what was the last one I had? It was some weird ass. Oh, it was a blind tasting club where you join this club and they send you little samples. So it was sort of someone who's buying whiskeys and putting little samples, and so you could get these kits, blind tasting kits. I get these all the time. Probably at least once a week I get an offer, and I turn them all down. This is the first time that someone contacted me and gave me an offer that they would send me a bottle and an agreement to do a video that I've ever accepted it. And the reason why I accepted it is because I'm already an enthusiast of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. They don't have to convince me of anything. This is such a fantastic whiskey, and I'm going to be reviewing. So here, this is a video that's going to come out this next week. This is an official bottling from Bowmore. This is the 21-year-old Aston Martin 21-year-old. It is, I'm just telling you straight up, it is phenomenal. Rob, or Whiskey in the Six, he has also reviewed this, and it's phenomenal. I paid about $300. These are now going anywhere between $500 and $1,000. I bought this, I don't know, a couple months ago. I'm going to tell you right now, just a sneak peek. If you have the money and you have the whereabouts to spend that kind of money on a whiskey, I highly recommend it. This is bottled at 51.8% ABV. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal whiskey. The full review would be out later this week. And I paid for that one. If I could get another one at the same price, I would buy another one. But, the collectors are going to go boom. The flippers are there and all that. We all know about that. So, because I already knew I was a fan of SMWS, and I'm growing in my fandom, and I'm going to be talking about SMWS the way I used to talk about Ardbeg. In a sense, being pissed off at Ardbeg made me a bigger fan of the SMWS. In fact, I joined the SMWS on the tail of firm mutation, all that bullshit and all that. I was looking for a new team, so to speak. The Ardbeg, it was like you join a football team, you become a fan of the football team, and you wear their shirts, and you root for your team, and that's your team, right? Maybe it's your local football team, baseball team, basketball team, whatever it is. Well, Ardbeg, I was part of the Ardbeg team, and I've basically left the cult of Ardbeg. I'm now a member of the cult of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and I think they're going to be a great contributor to my continuing education, experience, and exploration of whiskey. And should they ever let me down, should they ever do something if the prices go absolutely bonkers, if for what or they're not available, or the quality drops, or anything else, boom, I'll drop them in a heartbeat. So anyway, that's my take on that. If they sent me a bottle and I didn't like it, I would tell you, or I would let them know, hey, by the way, that bottle you sent me, I don't like it. Do you still want me to do a video on it? And if they said yes, then I'd go ahead and do it. If they said no, I'd say, okay, then I'm not doing a video on it. Thank you for the bottle, but I don't like it. But just from the history I've had with Scotch Malt Whisky Society and their whiskeys, at whiskeys events, I don't know where I put it. I have an advent calendar of 25 samples of Scotch Malt Whisky Society that were sent to me by George Kaplan. He sent them to me a couple years ago, and I did these short videos on these. Those are 25 different samples of different bottles from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, and they were all just mind-blowingly fantastic. So and that was another major contributor to joining the society. Alrighty. Sadly, when I went to visit Cadenheads in Edinburgh, I was disappointed in their selection, but at SMWS, they had a wonderful tasting selection. So Cadenheads, I don't see them here. I have one Cadenheads that I found. It literally has probably a 16th of an inch of dust, a schmutz on it, and it's just a blended malt. It seems mostly like it was from Cardew. And it's an okay whiskey, but I don't see Cadenheads in my neighborhood. I just don't see them here. So I think a lot of independent bottlers, the other independent bottlers, they're more available in Scotland and somewhere else than they are here in my neck of the woods. And so I really haven't spent a whole lot of time studying or paying much attention to independent bottlers because of the lack of availability, but also because in studying, I really wanted to understand the distillery and represent in my videos what was widely available and what was core range. I think the core range of any distillery is truly what represents them. These two bottles are representative of the potential of Bowmore, but they're not representative of Bowmore as a company or as a distillery and the way in which their management runs itself. So they represent the potential of Bowmore, what they could be, but they don't represent Bowmore as it is as a company and how that company runs its business. The core range represents the distillery as it's being run as a business, as its business philosophy. It's how it wants to present itself to the world, to the consumers, to the fans. That's how they want to present themselves. And what Douglas Laing and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society have said, you know what? We can present something better than what Bowmore has to offer. We can present them the way we like to present whiskeys. And so people are going to know, wow, check these out, because if you really want to understand Bowmore, if you really want to understand what they could be, then check these out. Having said that, this is an official releasing, an official bottling from Bowmore. But these are very, 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 very hard to come by. This is the 21-year-old Aston Martin. Phenomenal whiskey, very hard to come by. I did not search for this. A friend of mine in the retail business who owns a couple shops contacted me and let me know this was available. Rob, Whiskey in the 600, reviewed it, and so I bought it. That was it. So yes, they do have these rare releases that are phenomenal. And if you buy them super early, you can get them for less than what this one's currently selling for. I paid $300 for this. This is now $400. This is better than this. Now, I can't do a comparison between this and the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I would like to, but this is Pedro Jimenez and Oloroso cask, whereas this is hogshead. And so, I mean, it's just radically different flavor. Bourbon cask, basically bourbon cask versus sherry cask. I mean, the color is completely different. The flavor is different. This is just a really different whiskey. So it's more like compare the Bowmore 18 with this 21-year-old because they're both sherry cask. That's a closer comparison. But of course, this is lower ABV. But this is what they present as a core range. And this is what it could be. And this is what it could be. In fact, probably what I'll do in next week's live stream, I'll do a head-to-head with these two bottles. And I'll look around, see if I can find any other Bowmores, older Bowmores in my neighborhood. There are some smaller whiskey shops that I can find. They don't put their inventory online, so I might be able to check them out. Erik, off the subject, no, but have you had Old Potrero straight rye? So Old Potrero is in north of Marin County. The name of the town, it begins with a P. Petaluma. They're in Petaluma. I have tasted a sample, but I don't really say I know whiskey until I've had a bottle and gotten it down to the below the shoulder to the about where the label is. So having just a little sample, particularly if it's at an event, if you're at a friend's house or at a whiskey bar, that's just a first impression. You need to spend more time with a whiskey to truly know it. So I don't have a great recollection of it. I've tasted it. I just, Erik, I understand that Bowmore was Queen Elizabeth II's favorite. Well, good for her. I'm kind of curious how much queens sit on drinking whiskey or analyzing whiskey. Anyway, so Potrero, yes, I've tasted it. Oh, I know. I also tasted at there's Whiskey Fest and there's World of Whiskeys, these whiskey events every year. The last couple of years, it's been a little challenging, obviously, because of COVID. They have one in San Francisco and one in San Jose. And I've tasted there as well. But there's a difference between, let's take this one with this bottle. I had the neck pour. I had just a little bit of water. By the way, you have to put 2 teaspoons of water to truly experience it because this whiskey is tight. It's like it's doing this, and add 2 teaspoons of waters, and it does this. It opens up. It really opens up. Just 2 teaspoons of water. I don't like it on ice, but 2 teaspoons of water, and it's just it. You can't drink. So this one, I know I'm giving you a sort of plug for it. You can't drink this while watching a movie because you're either not going to be paying attention to this because you're paying attention to the movie, or this is so captivating you're not going to be paying attention to the movie. However, I did like reading I've been reading several books and online sources about Bowmore as part of my setting, and to be reading about Bowmore, taste that, just a little bit. I'm talking just a tiniest sip, and you sort of pause, and the flavor just goes on and on and on, and it just unravels and develops. And you're just like, holy cow! You have this sort of existential experience, and reading about it, and having been to Bowmore Distillery. I haven't been on the inside, but walked on the outside. It takes you back to Islay. It takes you back to Islay. And that's what a whiskey should do. That it's so mesmerizing. It's so captivating. And that you can watch a video about Bowmore Distillery or Islay, whatever, or you can be reading about it, and it almost brings you there. That's the ultimate experience of a whiskey, is that the whiskey, reflecting a place and the quality of a distillery, brings you there. All righty. Shelly is ready. Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me do this then. Cool. Invite. Copy. Shayla, not Shelly. All right, there you go. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, cool. So while we're waiting for Shayla to jump on, there's a link. I'm going to share something else with you. This is next weekend. All right. So I don't know if tickets are still available. You have to search for it online. I think it's the event is called Eventbrite. So next Sunday, 55 South to 55 South 1st Street in San Jose, Sunday, October 2nd from 5:30 to 7:30, $75 per member, $95 per non-member. I will be there. I will have my challenge coins in my pocket. If you're there and you come up and say, hey, Eric, I like your channel, I'll give you one of my challenge coins. Really, we're looking forward to this. All right, Shayla, give me a thumbs up when you're ready. There we go.
Hey, Eric, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
I'm gonna change backgrounds. Let's do this.
Oh, there we go. So fancy. Okay, I got a little Bowmore Vaults Edition 1 going in the glass.
Okay. Oh, nice. Do you have just a sample, or do you have the whole bottle?
Just a sample. Just a sample.
Oh, okay. So this is Vault Edition number 1. It's funny. So I'm actually it'll be coming out this next week when I in my video of the Aston Martin, and I do this. I don't know if you've watched my videos or not on this, but I go into great detail on the history of the distilleries, and so Vault Edition is mentioned in there.
Cool.
It's mentioned in there. So
cool.
Wow. So where did you get this from?
Roy, Aquavite. Sent it over. Yep.
Must be nice.
Also, his buddy Roddy, I guess he makes these shirts that have like Glencairn's tie-dyed on them. So I got one of those, and it's sick. You can't really see the Glencairn very well, but it's awesome.
Well, I will tell you, I'm jealous.
This is the only original bottling that I've had from them, and I don't really like most of the regular bottlings, but this one is awesome.
Well, Roy doesn't love me anymore because he doesn't send me T-shirts.
Oh no, I bought this. I had to buy this, but he did send me the Bowmore.
No. By the way, so if you want to drop a link in there to your channel, or if I don't think I have any mods in here today.
Oh, you're good. No worries.
Okay. In fact, I could do it. I'm making mod, except I don't have the right app up. All right. Anyway,
it's okay.
So, how you doing? I know you were traveling. You were over in Portugal. You were in Mexico, and then you're in Portugal. So, where are you at now?
So, back in Mexico, we're working on selling the house. So, we're finishing a renovation project upstairs that will hopefully be done in, I don't know, maybe a couple weeks. It was supposed to be done 3 months ago, so I think a couple weeks more might be the appropriate time. But then once the house sells here, we'll go to, I'm planning on just going to Kentucky for a little while because I want to visit some distilleries there. Sure. And then from Kentucky, we'll go over to Europe. That's the loose plan anyway. So
are you looking at landing in Portugal or somewhere else in Europe?
Well, I am having a internal conflict about whether I should go to Portugal or France. I want to go to France, but I also want to go to Portugal, and I'm really not sure what to do. So, not sure where we'll land.
So I'm quite the Francophile when it comes to wines.
Yeah.
The only place I've been to in France is Paris and Bordeaux.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to go back, I'd like to go to Burgundy. I'm big, Burgundy Pinot Noir fan. So where in France would you be looking at?
Well, I was thinking Bordeaux, but not sure. Just kind of that, Aquitaine region sort of a thing.
Right.
But also was thinking, just as an idea, might go to kind of northern France, a couple hours from Paris, because then I could be near Belgium and the Netherlands and kind of, whiskey meetups over in that area. So I'm not sure. I don't know.
Well, so up there, it's going to be colder, more rain. It's flatter. Mm-hmm. You're heading out towards Champagne, actually. Champagne region.
So actually kind of north of Champagne, probably. But yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know. I kind of like the cold and I kind of like the rain. So it's like, maybe, I don't know.
I was thinking, in terms of affordability and a different, more laissez-faire, laid back, I was thinking more like the Languedoc-Roussillon, southern France region.
Yeah.
In terms of a life, in terms of a stock, beyond the French Riviera, that kind of and the weather's very, very different.
Yeah.
But wow, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, so I was kind of thinking about Bordeaux, or maybe even like the Brittany area. I'm not really sure. I don't know.
I don't know.
Bordeaux or maybe northern France. That's
Okay.
the idea, but we'll see how it goes.
So there's a place in Bordeaux called the La Cité du Vin, city of wine.
Okay.
And I was there in, I think it was June 2016. I actually did a little bit of work for them,
nice.
some photography and video and stuff like that. It's sort of a high-tech wine museum that's very interactive.
Oh, that's
really,
cool.
Really cool place.
I'll have to check it out. Yeah, no matter where we land, I'll have to head down there and check it out.
So for me, Bordeaux was a nice place to visit.
Uh-huh.
I went to 4 out of the 5 first coasts. I know now we're talking about wine. I have a nice place to visit. I like being there. Saint-Emilion on the east bank or right bank was magical.
Yeah.
And Pomerol, west bank, Hot Medoc and all that.
Maybe not as much.
Maybe not as much.
Okay.
Maybe not as much. So
okay,
anyway.
Good to know. Yeah.
But live up and so if you go to Burgundy, Burgundy is about baguettes and bicycles and berets. The 3 B's: baguettes, bicycles, and berets. That's Burgundy. So
I can live with that.
So Bourgogne is about bicycles, baguettes, and berets.
Okay.
And Burgundy wine.
That's great. Yeah, I don't know. I do love Portugal. I love the people there, but there is just something about France that is just I don't know. So yeah, we'll see. But
so I've been going on about France. Their public transportation leaves much to be wanting.
Yeah.
They're on strike every other day. So you got to do that.
Along with most of Europe. No.
Parisians can have a bit of an attitude.
Yep.
Get out into the countryside towards Burgundy, whatever. I think it's quite different. Anyhow, but get back to whiskey.
For sure, absolutely. Sorry.
So, what do you think? So, tell me. So, do you have any notes on this particular whiskey?
Oh well, so I did a little bit of blending earlier, and I also did a 6 sample flight blind earlier. So my palate is, I would call it fried.
Okay.
But I'm still enjoying this quite a bit. But in terms of analyzing it, not so much. I'm just kind of enjoying it. I don't know. To me, it's just like I've tried other Bowmores, and I'm like, man, I just don't like this. It's colored, it's chill filtered, it's 40% or whatever. This is the first Bowmore that I've actually enjoyed, and I think, I don't know, I would get a bottle of this because I just enjoy it so much. But to me, it's like all of the beautiful things about Islay, but there's also quite a bit of salt. There's just a lot of salt, and I think it's, I don't know, it's wonderful to me. But that's about all I get with my fried palate. So
So for those who don't know, this is Shayla, Whiskey Central. I'm gonna guess you're like 28 years old.
I am 26, just turned 26.
Oh, 26.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get into whiskey till 6 years ago. I'm 56, so I'm 50 years old. So of course I did wine. Of course, I did wine for over 20 years. But again, I didn't get into wine until 30-ish, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I was 31. So you are getting into some and Shayla is nerdy geeky like I am. The difference is she's not having memory lapses due to age.
I don't know about that, but
so you had a great advantage, and I wish, of course, there's other things that come into the factor of the ability to get into wine or whiskey, finances, obviously, time, exposure, and everything else like that. But I kind of go, wow, if I could go back 20 years, what I know now, I knew then. Where I'd be at now in terms of my journey and exploration of whiskey, I'd be 20 years into it. I'd be like Roy. I'd be like Ralphie. I'd be a Ralphie.
Yeah, it was kind of funny too, because I think I'm definitely not a sommelier, but we got into it kind of the same way. I think I wasn't with the Wine and Spirit Educational Trust or anything like that, but I actually worked at a vineyard. My friend owns a vineyard in Oregon, and just kind of got through it that way. I worked with them for a while, and just kind of got interested in, maybe being a sommelier or those sorts of things, and then eventually kind of landed into whiskey similar to you, except without all of the qualifications.
Okay.
So yeah, kind of a similar path. So
yeah. So up in the Willamette Valley.
Yep. Yeah, it's a small vineyard. If you might have heard of it. I'm not sure. It's called Ruby Vineyard. It's pretty small, but yeah. So Joe Petticini was there when I was there. So I have many bottles of Cuvée Una, if you've heard of that, and I love that stuff. So yeah, Pinot Noir is probably my favorite wine.
So
might be a little biased, but
the Willamette Valley. If you were to go, if you look at a map, it's parallel with Burgundy, similar climate, and so it has sort of the New World fresh fruit character of, say, California, Russian River, but it has the earthy character of Burgundy, so it sort of has one foot in both worlds. That's sort of the stereotypical Willamette Valley Pinot. I've been up there before, Dundee Hills and all that. Great wines. So if you go to France, you might go to Burgundy. Go to Burgundy
for sure. At least once,
and then I could come visit.
There we go. Hey, you are always welcome. Portugal or France, whatever works out. We'll meet up for sure. At least in Scotland.
What about the languages? Do you speak any Spanish or Portuguese or French?
So I speak Spanish and some Portuguese. And then I don't speak French, but I know Spanish and Portuguese that I should be able to learn French pretty quickly. So it shouldn't be too hard. I'm hoping like a year or two and I'll have it down. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. It's a beautiful. It's funny. I was just listening to some French popular music earlier today. Yeah.
Oh, you'll have to send me the link because I listened to some. I have a French jazz playlist that I made, and if you have that link, I'd love to see it.
So when I get into wines or whiskeys, particularly if I get to travel to the region, I like to immerse myself in the place and its history, its culture, and everything else.
Yeah.
And so when I was in Bordeaux and I check into my hotel, actually in downtown Bordeaux, near the plaza, I turn on the television, and I don't care if it's commercials. I don't care what it is. I just want to hear it.
Yeah.
And I had it running all the time to get a sense of, so how do they do commercials? How do they do television? And what are they talking about? Now, of course, I don't understand a word they're saying because I don't speak French.
Right.
But I did the same thing when I was in Scotland, and I listened to the BBC in Scotland. I listened to the Gaelic BBC, even though I don't like a Gaelic.
Okay.
Just to get a sense, it kind of puts you mentally into the mood of being there.
For sure, yeah.
But then also makes you sort of dig as to what's the big issue with Gaelic and trying to preserve a language.
Right.
That the British were sort of trying to force it out and force everyone to speak English and so forth, and send out school teachers to force the kids to speak English and so forth, and forbid them from playing the bagpipes and wearing their tartans and all the rest of that.
Right.
You just get into the history, immerse yourself in the history of it.
Yeah. No, that's what I do with like Spanish and Portuguese when I was learning. That was like my currently my phone is in Portuguese, like just kind of helps me get into it a little bit. But I do the same sort of thing.
So my series setting is in I don't know if it's specifically Scottish, but I know it is UK. So when I get when I ask for directions to some place, I have a British person telling me how to get there.
Okay.
Yeah, and even
did they tell you in meters or?
No, but that's a weird thing. So it'll say turn left into the car park. We say parking lot.
Yeah, parking lot.
It even uses UK terms. So the weird thing is, some things if you drive around Scotland, there are some things that are in, I don't know what the term is, American standard in measurements, and some things that are in more UK standard.
Yeah.
So there's sort of both, and I was kind of surprised by that.
Yeah.
They do kilometers per hour in terms of speed limit, but in distances you see in miles.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I
Huh.
thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
as
I've
a
never been
traveler.
there yet, so I didn't know that, but that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, it's an interesting place to drive on the other side of the road and the other side of the car, and
Yeah.
sometimes there's only one lane, so you
I
gotta.
am a little nervous about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The story I'd like to tell. So when I was on Isle of Arran, Arran is an island, but it's also got a mountain. And
Okay.
so when you're going from La Cranza, which is Arran Distillery,
Right.
over to Lag on the
Yep.
south end,
South End, yeah.
in order to get there, you're going up an elevation on a one-lane road
Oh.
into the fog. You're going into the clouds, and you no longer can see what's in front of you. And you're on one lane, and you don't it's not just oncoming cars. It's deer and whatever wildlife they got running around.
Oh,
See, the cars have another driver who's going in the same direction and is thinking, I don't want to run into another dude.
Right.
And perhaps has headlights on. And when you're on a curb, you can honk your horn. But animals, they're just running around doing their thing, and they're not thinking about dun, 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 dun. I was a little more concerned about running into a deer.
For sure. Oh my gosh, that's scary. Yeah, that's like the worst thing, like San Francisco fog or something like that. Like it makes me nervous.
Yeah. So so white knuckling and praying a lot.
Yes, Aaron was a religious experience. Not in the way that you wanted it to be, but that's great.
But when I went to Lag, it had just opened and they hadn't released it. I think they still haven't released anything yet.
I don't think so, yeah.
And it wasn't on my agenda, but Daniel over at the Whiskey Throttle, he had recently visited them, I think before I did. Okay. And so he's the one who told me about it. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, I had this rare opportunity. When am I ever going to be back on the Isle of Arran?
Right.
I better take advantage of that since I'm somewhat in the neighborhood. I'll go check it out. So
that's cool.
So how much experience do you have with other Bowmores?
So I've just had a couple of the standards.
Right.
I've never bought a bottle of Bowmore. I've only had samples sent to me. So yeah, I've had maybe 3. That's about it. So yeah, the Vaults was the best one that I've had. I would love to have an SMWS bottle of it, like you were talking about, because SMWS is just the bee's knees.
Yes.
But yeah, this is not a Bowmore. This is just a Royal Brackla. But yeah. So I've only had 3 to answer your question. So not much experience with it at all.
But even based on that, so I'm imagining. So I've only bought one Bowmore. This is the 18.
Yep.
And like yourself, I've tasted samples of other core range Bowmore. So I know I've tasted all the core range.
Yeah.
And I just went, that's all right.
Same.
That was my basic. Is that sort of your impression?
Yeah, I tried a couple, and I was actually really excited to try them because I like a lot of other Islas, like I like Lagavulin, Lefroy, Ardbeg, Berclati, all of those, and I hadn't tried Bowmore yet, so somebody sent me one, and I was like, this is gonna be great, and I was like, this is okay.
Yes.
So
it's not bad.
It's not like
it's just like, what is this shit?
No, there's nothing wrong with it. It's more just it lacks depth, and it's not very interesting. So this Vault was more in my wheelhouse. I think the SMWS would definitely be, just with cast strength and natural presentation. Just kind of my thing is, I want to know what the distillery actually produces. Like if you're going into Bowmore and you're sampling from a cask, what is it going to taste like? And I think an SMWS experience gives you that a little bit more. But unfortunately, their distillery bottlings are they're just a little lackluster, and they don't show you that,
What's the ABV on that Vault edition?
Oh, I'm actually not sure because it was just a blind sample. It just has a red dot.
The Vault. So
let me see.
They have it's Vault number 1, a warehouse.
Yep.
And actually, parts of it are below sea level.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was originally built that way or it just sank a little bit.
Right.
And so you were talking about the saltiness earlier. I'm wondering, how much potentially from being from that warehouse does that have that kind of an impact? You know, you have to remember these distilleries were originally farms,
right?
You know, and they made grain. They produced grain, and something that was easier to transport and could, you know, because your grain's going to mold if you haven't done something else with it. It's going to mold if you try to hold on to it.
Yeah.
In that climate. So you make bread or whatever else with it.
Yeah.
And then, hey, to keep what you have left, to keep it from molding, you know, you need to malt it, ferment it, and distill it.
Yeah.
And then that's whether it's local consumption or a little bit of export.
Yeah.
That's the other avenue of income, and it's easier to transport, you know, and it's very stable.
At some point, you've had enough bread.
Yeah.
So
So
the ABV on this, sorry, just to, it's 51.5% ABV on the Vault Edition.
Yeah, I mean, what the hell, man?
Yep, it's like Bowmore. Come on, give me some more of this.
Jeez. Yeah. So it's just, so I mean, so the history of, you know, so the warehouses weren't originally for barrels. They were for sheep and for other things, and then they got converted into whiskey warehouses.
Yeah.
There. Donner Pass has on there 51.
Oh, thanks, Tim. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I found it on my phone there, but
there you go.
Awesome.
There you go. Yes. Okay. So I know it's just a sample, and I don't judge a whiskey by a neck pour, nor just one sample. Overall speaking, I like to be able to, you know, have it multiple times in never different ways.
Sure.
So you get a full sense of it. But what's your general impression of this one then?
With the salt edition or the Vault edition?
The salt
edition. I was a little Freudian slip there. But no, I love it. I'm not exactly sure how much this costs. Sorry. Again, lack of information here. Was not expecting this, but yeah, I think it's great. I wish Bowmore would put more stuff out like this, and I'm glad that the SMWS has a relationship with them, that they're able to put stuff out from the distillery. But yeah, I would buy a bottle of that if it was at any reasonable price, and I just want to share that with more people. So I would like to have a bottle so that I can say, hey, this is actually kind of what Bowmore is about, or like you said, that SMWS bottle that gives you a little bit more to kind of grab onto. So, but yeah, no, I love this one. I think it's great. I think it's a great showing from them for sure.
And I think one of the other things is, in terms of the spectrum of peat, you know, you can go the super intense Ardbeg, Laphroaig, and Lagavulin.
Yeah.
And from the south, and then, you know, Port Charlotte 10. You could go Octomore.
Right.
Maybe Bunhaven Moyne, Kalila. But that's something that, in terms of the intensity of the peat and the way it interacts with everything else, that's a little bit more in the middle. And the way these frame the spirit is nice. Is that could be their play? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the audience. People who don't want the extremes, something a little bit more in the middle in intensity of peat, and they could have that play. And if they could just deliver it on the flavor with more ABV and stop spending money on burnt sugar,
on marketing and burnt sugar,
and not to mention the time it takes to put that crap in there.
And filtering it and all that.
Yeah. And if you're in the burnt sugar business and that's how you feed your family by selling Distillery's burnt sugar, I'm sorry, find another line of work.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. It's actually, you know, I don't know, it's a little bit different, like you were talking about, than a lot of the other island distilleries. When you have something that's actually truly a Bowmore whiskey like this, or like an SMWS, it gives you a little bit of a different feel than a lot of other island distilleries. And if they put out more stuff like this, I think they'd be in competition with a lot of these other distilleries, because they're kind of down home plate a little bit. They're not off to left or right field, and it's I don't know, it's nice. I like the way that the spirit character plays with the terroir of the place, and it's it's really fantastic when they put out something that's actually an enthusiast whiskey.
They're out there, but they're harder to come by. So by the way, the burnt sugar business is selling very little to the Scotch whiskey industry. Most of their business is going into Coca-Cola and soda pops. There's far more of, they don't use E150A, they use E51 E50C. It's
Oh,
a
okay.
different. It's a more intense than
Okay.
what we use in whiskey, but
Okay.
they're not going to go out of business if Scotch.
They'll be okay. They'll be
Yeah,
okay.
they'll be
No
okay.
jobs
They'll
will
be
be
fine.
lost.
They'll be fine. You can get your E150 from Coca-Cola and
Yes.
Pepsi.
No caramel coloring jobs were harmed in the making of this. Yeah.
Anyway,
That's awesome.
so
Yeah, fingers
man.
crossed. Hopefully it changes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's starting to change, but hopefully it's trending that way anyway.
So what do you So let me ask you two questions.
Sure.
I like to know the beginning, where they're at, and then where they're going. So
Yeah.
how did you get into whiskey?
So the very first whiskey I had was actually, it was a Scotch and soda with Johnny Walker Red and a lemon twist. And I actually really liked it. I still drink Johnny Walker Red to this day. I don't drink it neat. I just drink it in a Scotch and soda, but people do like to hate on it a little bit. And I still am an advocate of it for a soda, type of whiskey.
I like Jack Daniel's Old Number 7 and Coca-Cola.
There we go. I still like that too. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, that's what I, have if it's like a hot day, that sort of thing. But I got into that, and I'm so I have Asperger's, so I get kind of like obsessive interest is what they call it. But like
I don't know what that's like.
really. No, and yeah, so I just kind of started researching, getting into it, and just kind of went deep down the rabbit hole. I just started with Johnny Walker history because I was like, what is this? Because I actually enjoyed the drink. And yeah, just got through it through Johnny Walker Red, kind of went down the history rabbit hole. And then as I was doing research, I found, online articles, and then eventually Whiskey Tube. And then as I got kind of into Whiskey Tube, just met some people in the community, and I was like, wow, this is a great community. And eventually just started a channel. So that was it was basically Johnny Walker Red.
And how long ago was that?
I think it was like 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago.
So the funny thing is, the whiskey world in comparison to the wine world is very small.
Yeah.
In wine, there's somewhere between 1,500 and 3,000 different grapes. It's been made for a lot longer.
Mm-hmm.
The complexity of, there's 400 wineries in Napa Valley alone, and Napa Valley only produces 4% of California wines. Yeah. That tells you how big wine is in California.
So crazy. Yeah.
And yet that's 3 times the amount of distilleries that are in Scotland.
Yeah.
That tells you how big wine is. Just in perspective.
Yeah.
So you can actually get your head around the world of whiskey much faster and much easier than wine.
Absolutely.
And yet it's mind blowing that with only 4 basic grains, barley, wheat, rye, and corn, you get these amazing varieties of flavors, obviously with casks and so forth.
Right.
But using yeast for fermentation, size of stills, yada, 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 the rest of it. It's amazing that a whiskey can be as complex or more complex than some of the most complex wines you can have. And that's how I got converted.
Yeah.
And then the history of the culture and everything else is behind it. So it's interesting to see in such a short period of time how far you've come and how much you've really jumped into it. And I think in the whiskey tuber community, you bring something fresh in terms of a personality and perspective and angle and everything else to it. Not that the rest of us are a bunch of old farts.
No. Absolutely not.
It's neat to see someone else with your enthusiasm and the energy. It's the enthusiasm and the energy that comes across. Rather and more than just sort of knowledge about this and that, but the enthusiasm about it. So you're awesome. So one of these days I'd like to see at the Bachelor's Ball. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. I had gone to the Pours in the Park in Michigan, and because I went to that, I was like, I can't go to 2 things, just budget wise, just can't go 2 things right after the other. But for sure we'll do that. And at the very least, hopefully there'll be some sort of Scotland meetup or the Limburg Whiskey Festival or just any of those. But for sure, I love meetups. Like that was my first meetup that I had ever been to, and it just like reinvigorates your entire soul. I don't know if you feel like that, but there is just something about it that it's so special.
Roy was here this year. Unfortunately, they had it in September. It was too freaking hot.
Yeah.
Next year, it's supposed to be October 7th. Lord willing, it'll be a little cooler.
Mm-hmm.
And so Roy was here last year. This year, he wasn't here last year due to flight restrictions.
Yep.
So I'm going to stand an offer. If Roy's here next year, particularly if Roy's here next year, and if you can make it, let me know and I'll help you get there.
Okay, for sure. Yeah.
I'll help you get there. I'd love.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, October sounds good. That's enough time in between August, so that should work.
Well, one of the other challenges, Austin is the fastest growing city, one of the fastest growing cities in the United States, and it's a high tourism. There's football games and all kinds of events, so it becomes a challenge with booking events and scheduling events because of everything else that's going on there. So
right. Yeah, we actually, I guess the Michigan thing, it coincided with I think it's called a Dream Cruise or something. It's this like huge car show, and so parking was a nightmare. There was a couple little hiccups there, but we made it work. But
well, tourism and events are on the rebound, trying to make up for lost time.
Right.
Due to all that. So
yeah.
What are you doing now in terms of studying and your channel and where you're going? What you got coming up? So people, I know what your past is.
Yeah.
I know what you're kind of doing now. So what are you doing now, and what going forward? What are you doing on your channel?
Yeah. So I'm basically just trying to not consume as much alcohol as possible, but try as many kind of options to get a little bit more knowledge, hopefully, with each different whiskey that I'm trying.
Right.
And I really would like to try to do some courses. I know that you've talked about those in the past, and like maybe with the Edinburgh Whiskey Academy or things like that. Once I get over there, would like to do something like that. And then right now, just for fun, I've been researching a lot about blending whiskeys. So I just got some graduated cylinders, which I'm really excited about. And I've been watching a bunch of Nancy Fraley interviews.
Cool.
And I kind of made it's a very small, short, kind of basic ideas of kind of blending. So that's what I'm, in terms of knowledge, that's what I'm working on right now. But yeah, so hopefully we'll do kind of a little bit of a blending series. Not to say here's how to blend, but kind of as this is my journey of maybe me trying to learn how to blend. So yeah, that's kind of so far what I'm working on right now. But
so when you get settled in and you have the time, it takes time and focus, everything else, and a lot going on. When you have the time and the focus and you want to do an online course with Edinburgh Whiskey Academy, let me know. I'll contact them and hook you up.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I want to do that. And then I know you talked about the Council of Whiskey Masters or something like that. I thought that there's maybe, at least for the first round, would be an interesting kind of thing. I'm not sure.
I'm kind of on the fence about that. I'm sort of there's a sense in which I'm doing their courses as a guinea pig for everybody else.
Yeah, a couple of the other courses you were talking about, like we just read Dave Broom's book or something. I'm like, how does that? What?
So I have a friend. He's going to be taking the level 2 exam, and we were probably an hour before we went live. I was texting with him on these issues. My current opinion is they need some serious work and overhaul. Yeah, and they need to bring themselves up to something much more like WSET, Educational Trust, like the Court of Master Sommeliers, like the Guild of Sommeliers, in terms of what they're doing and how they're presenting themselves if they want to be taken seriously.
Yeah. I thought maybe the first round would give me something, maybe, but then after that, I don't know.
If you're doing this for your own personal benefit, for now, I would stick with EWA.
Okay. Yeah,
that would be my recommendation.
Yeah. And I was thinking about doing a WSET, but then and maybe I would find interest in other things, but I don't like a lot of other spirits. And so I'm like, I mean, I could learn about them, but if there was like a whiskey one, just a whiskey one, maybe, but with it being kind of other spirits, I'm like, I don't know.
So you may have heard my story already. So I had no interest in spirits. I was only interested in wine. And one of the units for the WSET diploma was on spirits. And I was going to study for it just because I had to. And that's how I got into whiskey, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So I've looked at their spirit courses, and unless you want to get into rum and everything else, I wouldn't waste your time with it.
Yeah, that was my thing. It's like I know that is a quality course, so it's like I can trust the course, but I don't necessarily care about a lot of the content. So they
have a good reputation, a good growing reputation. They're more known in the UK, in Europe
than they are in the United States, but I think that is changing. So I think the materials are good. Tests are fairly fair in terms of representing the material you're supposed to be studying. They produce their own study materials, which I think are very good. There's a huge lag time between the time you take a test and the time that you get your answers back and find out how you did. Don't like that, but whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, unless you want to get into a whole lot of other spirits, which could be a little bit distracting. I mean, vodka doesn't throw me. Gin, yeah, it doesn't throw me. All the other spirits, whatever. I have some knowledge of it. I've had them, experienced them. I have a few bottles. Cognac, Armagnac. I think if I was going to get distracted by another spirit, it probably would be cognac and Armagnac.
Yeah, I think so too.
Going that direction.
Yeah. If I had to pick another one, it would probably be down that kind of brandy, cognac, Armagnac direction. So, yeah. But yeah, no, I think I'll do EWA for sure, and then even going down to going to distilleries and just learning what they have to offer. If they have sort of blending classes or anything like that, I know there's some cases where it's like once you've heard one, you maybe have heard a lot of them. But I figured, hey, if they give me a little bit of information, I'm fine with it. So, once I get over there, I plan on trying to explore some distilleries and.
So Erik Waite at yahoo.com, Erik, or just somehow get a hold of me in my about section. You can send me an email through that. Okay. My regular email.
Yeah.
I've done a little bit of work for them offline, and actually in recent discussions with them about doing work with them. So I could definitely hook you up and get you set up for a class.
Sure. Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
So anyhow, we've been at this for about an hour and a half. I like to keep it about an hour to hour and a half.
Sure.
And this next week, you'll be seeing my review of the Bowmore Aston Martin 21-year-old, absolutely fantastic. And so we'll be looking at the history of Bowmore this week. And we'll be getting it. We'll have our quiz next week. We had no quiz this week. We'll have a quiz next week on Bowmore Distillery as we continue in the study for the Council of Whiskey Masters. So, alrighty, Shayla, thank you very much for jumping in. About dang time, had you on. Should have had you on earlier.
There we go.
Slanjava.
Cheers, guys.
And hang in there for just a second. Thanks. Alrighty. It's going to ask me whether I want to give it a thumbs up or not.
That's good. What is that?
Let's go to this one. Oops. There we go.
Well, you might still be live.
I thought it ended it.
I don't know.